Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Tuesday, March the 5th, 2024. So, quite recently I had a video on Emmanuel Macron with reference to his comments about the possible need to send ground troops to Ukraine. And at the time, I was sort of saying that I thought that was a bit crazy. And I was looking at Macron's chart, and we could see that things are not looking good for Macron, that there is evidence that his judgment is beginning to fail. I mean, I don't mean in a long-term sense, that just right now he can't really see the wood for the trees. And then we had another story relating to some German generals discussing what they were going to do or what they would like to do or what they were planning on doing with Taurus missiles, I think. And I think it was Taurus missiles that they were considering sending Taurus missiles. I think they were Taurus missiles to destroy the Kerch Bridge, which is a bridge that connects Crimea with the mainland of Russia. And this conversation was leaked. I think it seems that the Russians got hold of this conversation and published it. Of course, the Germans were saying this is just Putin trying to cause trouble, but at the same time, it happened. So, you know, if you've got a real conversation and you're just releasing it, yes, you're trying to cause trouble. I mean, that's what governments do. But it has caused problems. So one has to ask, you know, what are the Germans actually doing? You know, who are these people in Germany that seem to be contemplating this attack on Russia, seem to be really actually actively talking about it? And I think this is obviously very dangerous. But, you know, this is not a politics channel. It's an astrology channel. And so I want to attempt to look at what's going on in Germany, looking at some German politicians. Now, I must emphasize, I don't really know a lot about Germany. And I should also say that I've got nothing against Germany. I've never really spent a long time in Germany. I don't speak German. But you know, the times I have been in Germany, I've always had a favourable impression. In fact, I mean, I've only been offended by a German once. It was when I was 18. I was in London, and I was staying in a youth hostel for some reason in London, and I went to this youth hostel, and I was completely drunk. And this German, he offered me a game of chess. So I was playing chess with this German, and I did a few moves, and then he said to me, "I think in English you call this fool's mate." And that was it. That's my only negative impression of a German. I mean, I thought that was really quite arrogant of him. And he took advantage of the fact I was completely drunk to beat me at chess in a few moves. But apart from that, I've got nothing against Germans. But I think there are problems, perhaps, with some German politicians. And I will be looking at some of their charts. I also want to have a look at the German chart for reunification. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Tuesday, March the 5th, 2024. So there are some politicians. That woman, that is, what's her name? Annalena Baerbock. She is, I believe, the German foreign minister. On the left is the Chancellor, Olaf Scholz. And to the right is who's what seems a rather sinister figure, the German defense minister, the federal defense minister, Boris Pistorius. Not to be confused with Oscar Pistorius. Oscar Pistorius was the guy in South Africa who killed his girlfriend. He was a runner. Remember, he was a runner that had no legs, and or no, the bottom part of his legs were missing at birth, and he had these plastic things, and he was able to run very fast with them. But that was Oscar Pistorius. This is Boris Pistorius. Anyway, I'll be looking at his horoscope shortly. Now, today there is not, I don't think, a great deal happening. So here's the chart for today. This is set for Tuesday, March the 5th, 2024 at noon. I've set it for New York. Main thing to be said is that the moon is in Capricorn. It stays in Capricorn all day long. It makes a couple of aspects. It aspects, you can see that it's going to aspect Saturn, and it aspects Jupiter. So we've got Moon-Jupiter trine. Moon in Capricorn making a trine to Jupiter. Okay, Moon in Capricorn is possibly a somewhat selfish placement for the moon. I mean, the moon is supposed to be a sensitive, feminine, intuitive planet, and then you throw it into Capricorn. So Capricorn it's quite a materialistic placing for the moon. People with moon in Capricorn can put their own interests first. Nothing wrong with that. But today we are going to be maybe focusing on material realities. I mean, that has to be done. I mean, the moon moves through Capricorn once a month. It has to happen. It has to happen from a perspective of balance, and it moves to a trine with Saturn and Jupiter. That means that we do actually have an opportunity to sort out our material needs. So if we need to make more money, if we need to be more secure, if we need to look after ourselves, perhaps at the expense of someone else, maybe. And I suppose, that's really the main picture. Though, if we can just ignore the signs and just say, well, Moon is trine Jupiter. Moon trine Jupiter is good. I mean, Moon trine Jupiter is a fortunate aspect. And even though the Moon is in Capricorn, there is the capacity for having a positive view of the world, for making things happen, and even making other people happy, or at least making other people stable, because the moon does sextile Saturn. That can help stabilize things. So if there's recently been a bit of disruption, or people haven't really known how to deal with each other, Moon in Capricorn, sextile Saturn is just the thing to sort everything out. And really, that's all there is to be said. I suppose I can look at the overall shaping of the planetary picture. If you look at the shaping of the chart, where the planets are, you'll see that they're starting to bunch. Everything is contained between this trine, between, you see there's the moon, there's Uranus. Things are starting to really bunch up, and they will become even more bunched up tomorrow. What that means is that today there could be a certain single focus. People's focus is starting to narrow in many different ways, but whatever someone is starting to focus on, whatever we're starting to focus on, there are going to be a lot of things we're going to be ignoring, we're not going to want to bother with. We're just not interested in it. And it's not just us, it's about other people as well. So if you say something and someone's not interested in what you're talking about, don't worry about it. People can only focus on a limited number of things at once, and that focus is getting smaller and smaller. Certainly, I think the focus is going to be at peak minimum probably tomorrow, when the moon starts starts making a conjunction to Pluto, then there's going to the planets are going to be within less than 120 degrees, with less than 120 degrees slice, and there'll be all this empty space around us, and causing that that limited focus. And yes, there isn't really much to say. Midpoints. Okay, Mercury is on the Sun-Neptune midpoint. So, Mercury is about how we communicate, how we think, how we understand things. And so if Mercury is on the Sun-Neptune midpoint in Pisces, we could say that there is the possibility of maybe deceiving ourselves, looking at the world and coming to the wrong conclusions. That is distinctly possible. Or perhaps putting our energy into the wrong things, things that just waste a huge amount of our time. So I think we have to be aware of that. Also, Mars is on the Mercury Hades midpoint. Hades is a hypothetical planet. So in other words, it doesn't really exist, but in the Uranian school, the Hades is used. It represents criminality, garbage, things that are somewhat low. And so if you put Mars on the Mercury Hades midpoint, well, Mercury Hades is the principle of bad language, low language, or perhaps talking about underhand things, thinking about criminality. So you put Mars on the Mercury Hades midpoint, and there's a possibility of putting one's energy into saying bad stuff, so we've got to be careful there, or putting one's energy into being devious and underhand. We may even be tempted to put our energy, some of us, a few of us, a small minority of us may be tempted to put our energy into thinking about projects which may or may not be legal. That's another possibility of how Mars on the Mercury node midpoint might work. But to end on a positive midpoint, well, Jupiter is aspecting the Venus-Pluto midpoint. Venus-Pluto is about transformative relationships, being able to perhaps greatly benefit from other people's company, or being able to have a strong influence, because Venus is about relating, Pluto can be about influence. So you put Jupiter on aspecting the Venus-Pluto midpoint, and so this may allow some of us, if we're in the right position, to have a big influence, a big and favourable influence on the world around us. When I say favourable, I suppose I'm talking about that in quite a selfish way, bearing in mind the fact that the moon is in Capricorn. So if we want to pursue our own interests by influencing people, by putting out having our own one-person propaganda machine, now might be the time to do it. Okay, so I now have to consider the 12 signs. Now, I'm thinking perhaps I really don't have a lot to say for the 12 signs. Astrologically, the big action is at the end of the week. At the end of a week, we've got a new moon, we've got Mars square Uranus, but there's not so much happening today. And so that might be reflected in what I say for the 12 signs. These, then, are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Tuesday, March the 5th, 2024. Aries, you are now feeling that you want to have an impact. You've perhaps watched things from the sides, you've come to some conclusions, and you feel that you are ready. And I think that as you move through society, as you try to sort of advance your agenda, we all have an agenda that we're trying to advance. And Aries, you in particular, have an agenda today that you want to move it off the ground. That agenda doesn't necessarily have to be connected with your work or career, or it can just be about whatever you're trying to achieve out there. And I think that you're going to be very successful, especially if you are sort of quite natural about it. There's no need to force it. Just be yourself, and I think you will find that things really move. And don't feel that you need to have any excitement about it. Just because the world out there seems a bit boring, doesn't seem to show any enthusiasm for what you're trying to do, doesn't matter. Don't read too much into that. Just because people don't show any enthusiasm doesn't mean that things aren't actually moving your way. And with the moon trine Jupiter, Aries, you're lucky. Again, you're not lucky in the sense of I don't know, finding $1 million in the street, but you are lucky in the sense of just things will just go your way quite naturally, and you'll find that overall the day should work out very well for you. Only warning for you, Aries, is just be careful what you say. There is a danger, Aries, that you may use bad language, intemperate language. You say things which might cause a bit of offence. So be careful how you explain yourself, and choose words very carefully. And whatever you do, don't use swear words, don't use bad language, because it really could spoil everything. Taurus, you're feeling that your own interests do matter. And so there is a little bit of selfishness here on your part, Taurus. But I don't want to exaggerate it, because you have to think, what are your interests about? What does actually matter to you, Taurus, at the moment? Yeah, sure. You understand the importance of money and stuff like that. But there's also the question, Taurus, of what are you supposed to be doing? What is it all about? You are, as we all know, that life is finite. We're on this planet for a purpose, and we have to understand our purpose. We have to understand our role on this planet, and at some stage we got to work it out. And today, with the moon trine Jupiter, the moon is in Capricorn, can be quite a self-centered sign, but that moon trine Jupiter is making you think about something wider, broader than your immediate material existence. And I think with this moon trine Jupiter that you have the opportunity to find something new, which is outside your usual experience. So it's just very important that you have your eyes open and that you're ready for new ideas. Don't close down any ideas that you come across. So if you are talking to people, reading stuff, and you hear something that sounds a bit over the top, that sounds quite shocking, don't just immediately reject it because it doesn't fit in. Consider the possibility that it might have real meaning for you. Some Taurians may be thinking about travel, but travel does not mean that you have to literally get on a plane and go to the other side of the world. You can travel in many different ways. You can travel with the soul, with the heart. Just remember, travel, get on a plane. You are damaging the ice. You are contributing to global warming if you believe in that kind of thing. Of course, belief is very important right now for Taurians. So you have to consider what you believe in, because I think there are some changes you can make in terms of your belief systems. A few of your beliefs have kind of had their day, and they just need to be rejected, or perhaps fine-tuned. So your overall philosophy on life is going to be important, and don't discount the influence that you're having on the world around you. Because today, Taurus, you can be very authoritative. You can be the law. You can give the impression that you are the law. You can give the impression that you speak with an authority that is absolutely real. And, you've got to use some firm language. Not bad language, I mean firm language. And I think that can be very effective. Talking about language, I mentioned just now, talking about the signs in general, about the astrology in general for today, that Mars is aspecting the Mercury-Hades midpoint. Now, Mars is the ruler of Scorpio, which is your opposite sign. So with Mars aspecting the Mercury-Hades midpoint, don't be surprised if some of the people around you are saying things which are maybe a bit coarse, unpleasant, something you don't want to hear. It's tempting to show your annoyance for bad language, or to judge someone on the bad language they use. But maybe today is a day when certain people are just going to be using bad language, and it's nothing to do with them. It just happens to be today, and tomorrow or the day after, things will have calmed down. So don't take bad language too seriously. But the overall picture today, I think, looks pretty good. And so perhaps what you have to do, perhaps what your job today is to take a broad view of the world, a view of a world that you would like to happen, but you'd like to be part of, that goes beyond your material existence, and somehow bring it down to earth. And I don't say somehow in a sort of sense that it's difficult. No, you can bring it down to earth. Gemini, you are in some ways a little distracted, or you may at least appear distracted to outside people on the outside. The reason you're going to appear distracted is because you're going to be thinking about other things. And, Gemini, you're not known for being a particularly emotional person. Remember, I'm a Gemini. I'm speaking about myself here as well as you, so don't take it personally. Gemini, you're not known to be a particularly emotional person, all things being equal. But I think today your feelings are stronger than usual. You're sort of brooding a bit. You're thinking about what can go wrong, what might go wrong. You can see the dark side. whatever people are saying, however happy people are, you can see how things can go wrong. It's very clear to you, and that may be motivating you, and you may feel that it's inappropriate, for example, to be wildly optimistic. That just might not seem the right thing to do because you can see what's coming round the corner, or at least you think you can see what's coming round the corner. But it's not the case that you are entirely negative. You have a real power, and your power is deep down. It comes from, I don't know, the bedrock of your soul, and it can reveal itself in strange ways, and you can make things happen in strange ways. You don't make things happen, I don't think, by barking orders, or by being incredibly assertive and aggressive. That is not the way to make things happen, because I don't think you'll come over very well if you act like that. I mean, there's a temptation to act like that, but you instead need to focus on what you really want, and perhaps have a vision about what you really want. Just imagine it, feel it, and what you feel can actually come about. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to spend the day in a complete retreat. You have to accept that today, in many respects, is a high-profile day, but at the same time, it's a day when you're wary of other people and when you're wary of a lot of social interaction. So there's a bit of a contradiction there. How do you bring that contradiction together? How do you be sociable and be out, or at least not sociable, but how are you out there in the world, but also in a sense of retreat? How can you actually bring the two together? So I think really what it is about going through the motions, being with people, being amongst people, but not necessarily being part of them. You are, you are. I don't know. It's like my dog. I mean, my dog is I mean, I don't, it's a dog. The dog is called a Slovensky Čuvač. It's similar to a Great Pyrenees or a Marama, and those kind of dogs. They're put as a working dog. They're put amongst the sheep, and they're not part of the sheep flock. They just do nothing. They don't really interact with the sheep. They're just there. And then until there's a threat, and when there's a threat, there's a sort of whether there's a wolf or a bear or whatever, then they immediately take action. And maybe in some ways you're a bit like that. You're amongst the world, but you're not with the world. You're not part of the world. You're just ready for something to happen. No, it's more than that. It's because you're with the world, you're amongst the world, you can feel what people are thinking, and that allows you to privately start to focus on what you want. It's just like if you're alone, isolated, having no one around you, you're not going to be able to really engage with the world emotionally. You're not going to be able to imagine what needs to happen. But when you're with other people but not part of them, you can start to make things happen. It's almost a magical process, but it's a magical process that can't happen when you're entirely alone. Finishing with relationships, I mean close relationships, one-to-one relationships in particular, It might sound as if I'm being a little negative there, but in terms of what I've said so far. But I should point out that the moon is making a trine aspect to Jupiter in the Gemini chart. Jupiter rules Sagittarius, your opposite sign. So with Moon trine Jupiter making a favorable aspect to Jupiter, one-to-one relationships can actually work pretty well. If you trust someone, you don't have to say much. You don't have to be a typical Gemini. You don't have to be a typical Gemini. Just you don't have to say a lot. But I think that you can really start to understand another person, and because you can understand another person on an emotional level, believe it or not, that allows you to create bonds of trust. But it's a slow process. That's fine. So in terms of some of the important relationships in your life, I think today you can actually make quite good progress. Cancer. Okay, the moon is now well and truly in Capricorn for everyone, regardless of your time zone. And I think with moon in Capricorn, you are quite focused on other people. That can't be helped because Capricorn is your opposite sign. That today a lot of the action taking place is about other people. Maybe that takes some of the pressure off you. It also means that other people's decisions can have an impact on you. I suppose for better or for worse, but probably for better. The main aspect today, after all, is moon trine Jupiter. The moon is your ruler. When it is trine Jupiter, its condition is improved. I mean, it's a very nice aspect, moon trine Jupiter, and it means that when you're with other people, things should run pretty well. Okay, there may not be much excitement, but there's a generally constructive atmosphere when you and other people can get things done. Also, as far as relationships are concerned, the moon is your ruler, and it is making a sextile aspect to Saturn. So Saturn rules Capricorn, your opposite sign. So if you've got moon sextile Saturn from a Cancerian perspective, it can be about constructive relationships. It's not about necessarily relationships working all by themselves without effort. And I'm talking about all kinds of relationships, not just romantic relationships. The moon sextile Saturn is constructive. It's about working on something. There may be a few areas of difficulty, but not major difficulty. And in fact, the difficulty is a challenge that can just encourage you and another person to work even harder to get things sorted out. So I therefore think that in terms of relationships with the moon today, with the moon trine Jupiter and sextile Saturn, I think it can be a very fortunate day, but not a spectacular day. Just making solid progress. But one thing I should say is that don't be surprised if in a very sort of gentle way that you find that someone else has a view of the world which is a bit different from your own. it may be a little challenging, but it's important that you don't overreact. Yeah, your first instinct might be to just say no, that's ridiculous, but just let the other person have their say. Maybe what they're saying is ridiculous, maybe not. Maybe their message needs to be moderated. So, do try to be reasonable in that sense. Leo, you, in your own way today, can be quite authoritative. I think, Leo, you do believe that you know the answers to everything. And you probably do. I know you like to be in that position. If you're a typical Leo, typical Leo, Sun in Leo, has a great sense of itself, and in many cases have a sense of your own authority. That doesn't mean you have to be a mini dictator. I don't know. I suppose Mussolini was a Leo, wasn't he? But I'm not saying you have to be a Mussolini. That would be quite inappropriate to be a Mussolini today. With this, you can quietly express and assert your authority. It can be very natural. Don't have to make a big fuss about it, but I think that you will be understood, and it will be quite clear that you mean business, and that you're someone to be respected. And in the process, you don't have to say much. In many respects, it isn't what you say that matters, it is what you do. And again, I'm not talking about spectacular actions, dramatic actions. It's quiet actions that matter. Quiet, low-profile actions, things that are always happening, things that you're always doing. People notice what you're doing, and you're setting a great example. Your authority today is in many respects your example. Some people might choose to ignore your example. Fair enough. But a lot of people will notice what you're doing, and they'll take the view that you're giving a good example, and that will support your attempts to establish your authority. So many people try to be authoritative. Going back to the environment, people say that we've got to be green and all of this kind of stuff, and they go on and on about climate change and global warming, and then they fly around in private jets. That is an example of a bad example. That's not how you. That is not how you change minds. If you're trying to impress upon someone the importance of climate change, you don't. You don't travel by private jet, and you're not going to be traveling by private jet today, are you? But then, perhaps your aims are somewhat more modest by not being hypocritical. And I think you are a very unhypocritical person at the moment. What you are and what you do and what you say, they're all in accord with each other. And from a moral point of view, I think that puts you in a very good position. Virgo. Moon's in Capricorn. From a Virgo perspective, that is, of course, good news. Because Virgo is an earth sign, and when the moon is in Capricorn, also in an earth sign, things are moving, and the moon is trine Jupiter, so we get this triangular relationship. So the earth signs are Virgo, Capricorn, and Taurus. So got moon in Capricorn making a trine to Jupiter, and so Moon, Jupiter, that trine is sending its energy to the empty Earth sign. And that empty Earth sign, which creates the triangular relationship, is Virgo. So you are at one corner of the triangle, the moon is at another corner, and Jupiter is at another corner, and everything's running nice and smoothly. And so today, Virgo, I think things should really run very nicely for you. I don't think there'll be any complications, any real complications. And I think that you should find that other people, world around you, doesn't bother you. They don't give you any. There shouldn't be much in the way of pushback. I do understand that there are still a lot of planets in Pisces: Saturn, Sun, Mercury, Neptune. But I don't think that's a problem. The moon, while moving through Capricorn, makes a sextile to Saturn. The sextiles in astrology are a fortunate aspect, needs a bit of effort, but it's nonetheless fortunate. And I think you're going to find that there is possibly one person who can be really helpful. They'll give you some excellent advice. Okay, there may be a little bit of criticism, but this person may be older than you, or wiser than you. Yeah, there are people out there who are wiser than you, and that shouldn't bother you. Or at least wiser than you in terms of one particular thing, one particular topic. And that's good, because I think you can get some really sort of useful feedback there. And so I think that things will run smoothly. One small warning, though, and it is this, that Mercury is your ruler, and Mercury is conjunct the Sun, Neptune midpoint. Don't spend too much time on distractions. There is a distraction. Things are running smoothly. Things nicely. Everything's running nicely, but something could distract you from the path. So you have to work that out. You have to work out what is the path for today, and what would happen if you left that path. Because with Mercury on conjunct the Sun Neptune midpoint, Mercury is making a wide conjunction to the Sun. Sun could confuse you. Mercury is making a wide conjunction to Neptune. Mercury is on the Sun Neptune midpoint. I don't know. Beware of being distracted. And I've just said that you should listen to someone who is wiser than you. Yes, but there may be another person who is not wiser than you, who could lead you in completely the wrong direction. So you do have to make the distinction there. But Virgo, you're good at making distinctions. I think that is something that you will be able to do. Libra. Libra, I don't think you're particularly in the mood for, being out there, being noticed. I don't think that's important to you. I think in many respects you would just prefer to do things your own way, at your own pace, not have to live according to deadlines, not have to spend all your time worrying about what other people are thinking. I think that is very much part of your reality today. And I'm not going to criticize that. I think that is probably very appropriate. But I don't want to. I don't want to give you the impression that there is nothing that needs to be done, or indeed that there's nothing that you can do well. There are things that you can do well, but the things you can do well maybe do not relate to what's going on out there in public, in the bright lights. No, Libra, you're going to work best when you're not in the bright lights, when you're acting in a position of, I don't know, some, I don't say darkness, but when you're, or, the shadows, yeah. I mean, you will, yes, I suppose the shadows. I think you'll work best in the shadows, but I mean, I don't mean shadows in a particularly negative way. You can do things quietly and privately, and you can make things happen. It doesn't have to be about making a big show of it. And so the less you are disturbed, the more effective you will be. And it might also be a time when you can do some quiet organization. Things can be quietly organized. You don't have to tell people what you're doing. You don't have to explain what you're doing. The people that matter will naturally understand what you're doing. If they don't understand what you're doing, then really you don't have to bother about it too much. And as if if you're involved with work, if you're working, maybe you're not, but if you are, then possibly your best work will be done maybe at home. So if you have an opportunity to work at home or do stuff at home, then go for it, because that's where you will be most effective. And it's not just about work. If you're trying to make an impression on the world, then you don't have to be in everyone's face. You can actually make your best and most powerful impression by withdrawing a little. And most importantly, you have to be on home ground, because when you are on home ground, you are going to be most effective. And also, when you're on home ground, you're going to be most creative, and that certainly matters. And your creativity, as I've been saying quite a lot over the last couple of weeks with Venus moving through Aquarius. You remember, Venus is your ruler. At the moment, your creativity really does matter, and it's a time when your creativity needs to be taken seriously, and it needs to be, serious creativity does matter today. Be serious about it. It's not a laughing matter. It's real, and that is something that you can certainly benefit by working on. Scorpio. As I said to Aries, be careful what you say. There is a danger. There's a danger, Scorpio, like as with Aries, because remember, Scorpio and Aries, they have the same ruling planet, which is Mars. You really have to be careful what you say, because if you could say the wrong things and cause offense, and it's also about choosing the wrong words. The words you use may be very inappropriate. So if it doesn't have to be said, don't say it. Even if for one reason or another you're feeling frustrated. But why should you feel frustrated? And indeed, why should you be quiet? You don't have to be quiet. In fact, today, if you show a little bit of discipline, you're able to communicate with great power and great effectiveness. Just keep it simple. focus on the things that matter. There are certain things today that don't matter. And I suppose when you're talking about things that don't matter, that's when the trouble starts. And when you're interacting with the world, I suppose what you need to consider is other people's interests. If you're discussing someone else's interests, the things they find important, then you'll get their attention very quickly. And right now, you understand what makes people tick. You understand what things people feed on. Some people feed on money, some people feed on affection, some people feed on power. You understand that, all of that. And because you understand that, you're in a powerful position. You kind of know how to manipulate people, and it's all very easy. And so, Scorpio, you really do know how to get people's attention. It's really very straightforward as far as you're concerned. Of course, it may occur to you that a few people feed on things that are quite base and are just not nice. And maybe once you realize that certain people are actually totally selfish, totally into themselves, you can then make a decision. You can maybe make the decision that you maybe don't want these people in your life anymore, that these people aren't going to be any good for you. And so that might be something you want to do. But overall, Scorpio, today you have the ability to get your message across very effectively. Just don't spoil it by using the wrong words. Sagittarius. It's probably not a particularly Sagittarian day in one sense. The reason it's not a particularly Sagittarian day is because it's just a day. Well, we just had the moon in Sagittarius. The moon was in Sagittarius quite recently, but the moon has now moved into Capricorn. And Sagittarius, you are a fire sign, and there are no planets in fire signs, which on the surface is not great. You may feel that there isn't much excitement going on, but I think that does encourage you, Sagittarius, to start focusing on things that are important and things that you often ignore. Things that are important, yes, they are important, but you ignore them because they're not fun. And today you can concentrate on things that are not fun, and you can actually concentrate on them extremely well. After all, the moon in Capricorn is making a trine to Jupiter in Taurus, and Jupiter's your ruling planet, and this means that it's a great day for clearing backlogs, and also for getting into things that you usually don't bother with. You've always got better things to do. That one thing you need to do, you can always put it off until tomorrow. Well, tomorrow has arrived, and so as I said, don't do today what you can put off until tomorrow. Yeah, it's tomorrow, and now you can sort it out. And it won't be anything like as difficult as you had imagined. It will actually be pretty easy. And I think you'll be helped by the fact that today, you're going to be very grounded, just naturally grounded, much more grounded than you usually are. What's going on in the outside world, all the dramas out there. Actually, if you think about it, Sagittarius, you're not going to be particularly interested. You can just put it all to one side and just concentrate on what matters to you. And yeah, lack of excitement, but so what? By doing this kind of work, that's a good investment for the future. It will mean at a later stage you can have lots of excitement without feeling guilty about it. As far as relationships are concerned, you probably need to be a bit careful, because some of the people around you I don't think are particularly reliable. They may get the wrong idea about things. I mean, you've had this for some time, from a Sagittarian perspective. Mercury is your relationship ruler because it rules Gemini, your opposite sign. And Mercury is not in great shape, as I've already said over the last few days. It's in Pisces, not the best sign for Gemini for Mercury to be in. It's conjunct the Sun. In fact, today it's conjunct the Sun-Neptune midpoint. It's halfway. It's making a conjunction to the Sun. It's making a conjunction to the Neptune, wide conjunction to Neptune, wide conjunction to the Sun, and that means that certain people who you thought you could trust, are actually pretty unsure of themselves and are actually in a position where they could make mistakes. So do be careful about that, and don't necessarily trust other people's judgment. They might be very convincing, and I'm talking about all sorts of other people. Could be members of your family, might well be members of your family. Just saying stuff that sounds good, but if you really think about it, it is nonsense. So that is one thing that you have to be careful about. But it might just be a detail. I mean, the big picture today, Sagittarius, is that really you can sort things out on many different levels, including the financial level. Capricorn, you are feeling good. After all, the moon is moving through your sign. Moon is moving through Capricorn. Moon is in Capricorn all time zones. Doesn't matter where you are, whether you're in Los Angeles or Sydney, Australia, the moon is in Capricorn. And that's the way it is. So with the moon in Capricorn, you do feel a certain sense of confidence that you are in the right place, and that you do have control. Further, the moon is making a trine to Jupiter in Taurus, and that makes you feel even better. You're not only in the right place, but you're able to make things happen, and also you're able to harness your fundamental creativity with that Jupiter in Taurus. It's about doing something that is important to you, that is really an essential part of who you are, and it's not something that can be compromised. And it's about building something of lasting value. It's not something temporary that will only last today or tomorrow. It's all about building something of lasting value. And I should remind you that Jupiter has been in Taurus. Very, very creative placement for Capricorns. And Jupiter's been in Taurus, I think, since May of last year, May 2023. Now, Jupiter's not going to stay in Taurus forever. In a few months' time, it will leave Taurus, and this is a time when you should be really building something, but something that is just important to you. And today with the moon in Capricorn making this trine to Jupiter, this is a time when you really can do some extra building, and feel comfortable about what you're doing, confident about what you're doing. It's not something that has to be negotiated. But even if it does have to be negotiated today, even if negotiations are looking good, you know how to interact. The moon while moving through Capricorn. I said it makes a trine to Jupiter. The moon makes a sextile to Saturn, and Saturn, of course, is your ruler. And so moon sextile Saturn. That is really harmonious. It feels actually, Capricorn, that you're not just in harmony with yourself, but you're potentially in harmony with the people around you, and you're in harmony with the world around you. And if anyone tells you otherwise, I think they're wrong. And if you see a bit of disharmony, it's their problem, not your problem. And it goes without saying then that relationships, one-to-one relationships, all levels, can work really well. I mean, after all, the moon rules Cancer, which is your opposite sign, and moon is in Capricorn. The symbolism there of moon in Capricorn sextile Saturn is someone who really thinks you're wonderful. They're in your sphere, they're in your world, they're following your rules, and because of that, you can get on really well with them, and you can set the tempo of whatever relationship this is. So overall, Capricorn, things are looking good. Aquarius, there's probably nothing much that has to be done, but that doesn't mean that there's nothing that can be done. There are still things you can do, but without feeling a terrible sense of obligation. You're probably in the mood for doing not very much, but there are things going on. There are people out there who want to be in touch with you. Perhaps you haven't really seen this. You haven't perhaps fully accepted your own popularity, and you've perhaps underestimated yourself. Because in some respects, Aquarius, you can actually be quite a stabilizing influence, and some people might appreciate your stabilizing influence. That you might have the capacity to bring people down to earth, and you just have to perhaps do a bit of listening, but it is about listening. I don't think as much it has to be said. It's not a day for saying much. Because you know how you want things to be today. I'm really sure about that. You know how you want things to be, and that's it. And so, why is it necessary to say anything at all? You could argue. But you have ideas, and you have a particular view of the world, which you maybe want to impress on certain people. You have to come to some conclusions recently, and I think it's perhaps time to start to disseminate these conclusions and tell people what these conclusions actually are. So maybe that is a process that you need to get going on. People will listen to you. Indeed, the fewer words you say, the more powerful you are, because every word that you do say will then carry greater weight. And yes, I think you can slowly but surely sign people up to your particular view of the world. I don't know what that view of the world relates to. It's something to do with your talent. There's a talent you have. It could be a business talent, it could be an artistic talent, it could be a creative talent, some kind of talent that you do have, which it does seem that people do need to know about, and they need to hear about, and they need to start to slowly realize that you have a lot of the answers. So, to sum it all up, Aquarius, I don't think it's a super exciting day, but today is solid. I don't think anything bad will happen. I just think it's just about slowly building up your authority, but not expecting spectacular results, at least not immediately. Pisces, you are possibly feeling quite sociable. There are people you'd like to meet, places you'd like to go to, not least because the moon is making a trine aspect to Jupiter. But Jupiter is your ruler. Jupiter is in Taurus, the moon is in Capricorn, so you're getting this trine aspect between the moon and Jupiter, and I think that this trine aspect between moon and Jupiter is quite sociable. It allows you to interact with people, particularly on a fairly light level, sort of a level of friendship. Whether you're meeting people face to face or on the phone, things flow very easily. And although it's light, I do think you will be the one who is in control. So whatever the type of communication, you are going to be in control of things, and I do believe that you can be gently persuasive. So if you're trying to persuade someone to do something or to believe something, then I think you'll be very good at it. You'll know what to say, and you'll know what to act, and you'll know what strings to pull. You don't have to declare what you're trying to achieve. It's not like that. Just be subtle, And Pisces is a very subtle sign. Pisces knows how to, slowly undermines another person's view of the world and bring it down and perhaps replace it with something else. Of course, that image suggests that you're a very manipulative Pisces, and of course I'm not saying you are a manipulative Pisces. Some Pisceans are very manipulative. Maybe other Pisceans can perhaps ask important questions, especially now. Saturn has been in your star sign for pretty much a year now, and you're finding your power, and that is very much to be welcomed. You're finding your power. Quite what you do with your power, well, that is another matter, and I suppose there is a possibility that you misuse your power, but that needn't happen. But I also think that if you've got a contact, if you've been developing a contact with someone, for whatever type of contact this is, also today, I think you can solidify and stabilize that contact if that is important to you, because the moon in Capricorn is making a favorable sextile to Saturn, and of course Saturn is in your star sign, and so Saturn is, allows you to sort of bring things down to earth and anchor things. So if you don't want to lose someone, or you don't want to lose a connection, then today is a great time to create a bond that can't easily be broken. Now, one thing I should say is that some of the people you're interacting with can't entirely be trusted, because they just seem to have a wrong view of the world. Now, it may be that you can change a wrong view of the world, and maybe that's part of what you're trying to do, because I think you are quite persuasive today. If people have reached the wrong decisions, then perhaps you can bring them back onto the straight and narrow, and maybe that's a lot of what you're trying to do, get people to see sense. But you do have to accept that maybe not everyone is going to see sense, and that there may be some people who just can't be persuaded. They just are not going to listen to you, and that they are stuck in an erroneous view of the world, and nothing can change that. So I would suggest that you just accept that, and don't waste your time on people who are not going to listen. But I do think that most people are going to listen. You are very persuasive today. You understand people's weaknesses, you understand people's strengths, you understand what people want, and so overall, Pisces, I do think that you can get your way. So we now are going to look at the day from a different perspective. We're going to look at the day from the perspective of the I Ching. I asked the question, what is Tuesday going to be like? For those watching the I Ching segment, I Ching section of this video, and the first hexagram I got was hexagram 44, which is coming to meet. This can be a bit of a problem hexagram, because there is a danger that we get involved with the wrong hexagrams. Now, I should say that this hexagram does move, so don't panic. This is not the whole picture. But there are some people out there who I don't think can be entirely trusted, and certain situations can't be entirely trusted. But there are people and things that could try to force themselves onto us, and there is a danger, if we're not careful, that we actually lose control. I mean, the whole point should be to maintain our independence. That is really important today. We do have to be in control of our life. We have to be making our own decisions. Yet there are forces out there which are encouraging us to relinquish our independence, perhaps to do things another person's way, and that's not desirable. Although the temptation to give in, the temptation to do things in someone else's way, they are going to be very strong. So we have to hold firm for as long as possible. But there are two moving lines here. The bottom line moves, which is a bit of a problem. And then the fifth line moves. And then with the fifth line moving, that indicates a fortunate change. Now, how is this fortunate? What is this fortunate change about? Now, one way of looking at this hexagram 44 coming to meet is about talking about the rise of evil elements, evil elements that we need to resist, and or we need to back off. We don't want to. We must try not to involve ourselves with this, because otherwise, we are going to lose our independence. But the fifth line moves, and the fifth line does indicate that we may be able to change someone or a group of people, or maybe it's about something about ourselves. Just because someone is evil, just because someone is up to no good, doesn't mean that we can't change their mind, that we can't show them a different view of the world. And I think that's really optimistic. So don't assume that even if someone is up to no good, don't assume that they can't have some kind of inner transformation and start to really see the world in a different and more constructive way. And so there might be a change, and a very fortunate change. So what sounds really difficult can move. And then we get to the second hexagram, which is hexagram number 14. This is possession in great measure. It is one of the best hexagrams in the book. It's by holding out, by resisting evil, by maintaining our independence, we can change the situation entirely. And so we're in a position where finally our own worth is recognized. Possession, it's not necessarily about money. It's about what we have, what we own. What we own, but what we own in terms of our knowledge and our experience. Everything that we are that makes us special. Possession in great measure is what we have. And I think suddenly we realize what we have, and we realize that we are unique, and we can actually start to use our possessions on all levels to really make things work, make things move, and certainly to make our own lives, and probably other people's lives as well, a whole lot better. So overall, the I Ching suggests it's a day that perhaps starts in quite a difficult way. There is a danger of losing our independence, of evil forces breaking things up, and evil. I know it's a strong word. I don't probably mean evil quite in that way, but forces that are disintegrative. Those disintegrative forces, if we can just resist it, maintain our balance for as long as possible, then in the end there's going to be a breakthrough, and we may be able to change something from being a problem into an opportunity, and then that leads to possession in great measure, and we can take advantage of everything we've got and perhaps get more, because it is possession in great measure. In other words, our possessions can be increased. Finally, there's astrology, and I wanted to talk about Germany, especially in light of these German generals. I think they're Air Force generals having this conversation about destroying the Kerch Bridge and perhaps other attacks on Russia. This is the news has come out. Okay, sure, the Russians produced maybe eavesdropped on a conversation, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. No one's denying it. So it did happen, and so I just wanted to look at Germany and see what might be going on. I suppose if you're considering Germany, you should consider Germany's horoscope. I mean, that's quite an important starting point, isn't it? Germany was born on October the 3rd, 1990, wasn't it? With its reunification. I mean, I'm sure there are earlier charts, I suppose 1870 charts, and perhaps a chart of the Federal Republic before that. When West Germany, other charts to consider. But this is a chart for German unification, and you've got Moon in Pisces in the ninth. That's some fantasy, isn't it? Moon in Pisces in the ninth. The Moon is the people. The ninth house. The ninth house in astrology, I suppose, there's a lot to do with foreign policy in the ninth, in a national chart, and it's opposition Mercury. It's a good Mercury in Virgo, opposition the Moon. On the face of it, I mean, it's not such a mega chart. Jupiter. Look at there's Jupiter rising. I mean, Jupiter rising, I suppose, what you could say was, the whole excitement about, the wall has come down and Germany's coming together. Jupiter rising, that's right in there. Astrologically, when Germany was formed, you had this big conjunction between Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus, and you can see the conjunction here. It's kind of it's sort of hardwired into Germany's DNA, this Saturn, Neptune, Uranus conjunction. But it was born of the breakup of communism, the breakup of the Soviet Union. This is very much part of what Germany is, but I think there's a bit of a shadow here. In terms of Jungian astrology, Jungian psychology, there's always a shadow. There's a part of us that we don't fully recognize, and that stuff in Aquarius, that Aquarius descendant, the descendant is the other. So if you've got Leo rising, you've got the Aquarius descendant is a thing that it doesn't fully accept, but it is perhaps part of it. So what am I talking about when I'm talking about that Aquarius descendant? Well, I'm talking about this, to be honest. I'm talking about this. I'm talking about the chart of Nazi Germany. This is a chart of Nazi Germany, born January the 30th, 1933. This is when Hitler came to power. And when Hitler came to power, there was a conjunction between Mercury, Saturn, and the Sun. And if we look at this chart, if we compare the German 1990 chart with the chart of Nazi Germany, we can see that, assuming the ascendant is correct, if we take midnight, October 3rd, 1990, I mean, I'd set it for Berlin and not Bonn. I've seen other charts that show Bonn as but still, even if you had this chart set for Bonn, you'd still have early Leo rising. But this the Mercury-Saturn-Sun conjunction in the horoscope of Nazi Germany on January the 30th, 1933, is something obviously, the current Germany says, "Oh, that's nothing to do with us. We're shot of that." But it's part of the shadow uh, of the German national psychology. It's there, and of course, when something is repressed, there's always a danger that it can manifest. Also, Nazi Germany's moon was at 5 Aries, and the 1990 chart set for midnight has its midheaven at 10 degrees Aries. You know, the midheaven is kind of what we aspire to. So there's something a little bit sinister here that I do think we need to be aware of. You know, when looking at the German chart. Now we have to consider some of the leaders. Now, Germany is really difficult. Germany is difficult to understand because, you know, you've got this woman, Annalena Baerbock. She's supposed to be a Green, the foreign minister, and she is a passionate advocate of Germany's war against Russia. It kind of is an effective war against Russia. Here's Annalena Baerbock's horoscope. By the way, I've talked about her chart before, but she's the foreign minister. She's born December the 15th, 1980. I don't know what time she's born. But she's got Sun Neptune conjunction in Sagittarius, and that is a bit confused. So having that Sun Neptune conjunction in Sagittarius, what is she doing? But she is a Sagittarius, and you know, in some ways, I think she kind of represents the shadow, in some weird respect, of the German chart. You know, she said, you know, I've mentioned this before. She said in a speech that she had this vision for the European Union of European Union being from Lisbon to Luhansk. And she said it in a very enthusiastic Sagittarian way, this wonderful thing, the European Union. All, you know, Luhansk, by the way, is in the Donbass. It's solidly under Russian control. This idea of this massive European Union. And, you know, that reminds us of, you know, some of those videos put out at the peak of the Second World War, when, you know, you'd have the Germans would be communicating with at Christmas, all these radio stations all over the Third Reich, you know, Achtung Stalingrad, and they'd have someone in Stalingrad would be saying, and then there'd be someone in Paris and then she comes up with this same vision of, you know, the European Union from Lisbon to Luhansk. It sounds the same thing, and I'm wondering, with her Sagittarius, that she was somehow picking up on the shadow, that connection that Germany is in denial of, it with Nazi Germany. That's okay. She's saying, "Oh, it's not Germany; it's the European Union," but it seems to have transposed that. So I think that's a possibility there. And yes, she has this Sun-Neptune conjunction in Sagittarius. She doesn't perhaps think things through, and perhaps she's at a Sun-Neptune conjunction. She's perhaps being sort of overly influenced by these unconscious processes, which are, you know, under the surface, going on under the surface in the German horoscope. I mean, I don't really want to say much more about her chart. She was born on Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. You know, a lot of, I don't know why she went into politics. I mean, she could have done very well with being a reality TV star. Paris Hilton was born on a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. Kim Kardashian was born on a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. Who else? Meghan Markle was born on a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. So, that's perhaps the generation she comes from. It's a very strong conjunction. There's nothing wrong with it. Jupiter is Saturn. Sorry, Saturn is well placed. It's in Libra. It's conjunct Jupiter. Seems to work well for her. I suppose she's doing well. She's in foreign minister, but as a foreign minister, as a politician, as a German politician, it seems with that Sagittarius that she's being influenced by things that perhaps she doesn't understand, that are just over her head. These powerful unconscious processes. And I think when she talked about Lisbon to Luhansk, I think that was extremely worrying. So another politician I've looked at is Olaf Scholz. So he's the Chancellor of Germany. Now, there is an interesting thing about Olaf Scholz's chart, is that he was born on June the 15th, 1958. Now, remember that Annalena Baerbock, she was born on December the 15th, 1980. So Annalena Baerbock's sun is at 23, this is a noon sun, I don't know her time of birth, but Annalena Baerbock's sun is at 23:39 Sagittarius. Olaf Scholz's sun is at 23 Gemini. So Olaf Scholz's sun is opposition Annalena Baerbock's sun. That may suggest some tension between Annalena Baerbock and Olaf Scholz. I don't know how well they get on with each other. Maybe not too well. And he has his Saturn. His Saturn is on Annalena Baerbock's sun, because he was born with a Sun-Saturn conjunction. He was also born with Jupiter rising. That's a very good Jupiter, trine the sun. He's got a strong sun. As I talked about Olaf Scholz's chart before, and I think he's someone who is quite lucky. I think he's been over-promoted in terms of him becoming German Chancellor. Now, Olaf Scholz has the moon at Olaf Scholz has a moon at 21 Taurus, so that does mean that Uranus is about to. The moon can be about the people. It can also be it can also be about the people. It can be about him and how he feels. He said, "I warned you, we've got a dog here. I can't do anything about it. That's why I'm down here." The moon is about the people, and the moon is so Uranus is conjunct the moon, and so the moon may be the German population not too happy about Olaf Scholz. So when does this Uranus conjunct moon become exact? Uranus conjunct moon very soon. It's in April. Uranus will be conjunct Olaf Scholz's moon, and so that could create a few issues for him. And so I think he has to be careful. But is that enough? He's involved in a war with Russia. His effective war. I know it's not a declared war, but with the generals doing this, discussing how they are going to be potentially attacking the Kerch Bridge, which is the bridge between Crimea and Russia. I think he has an issue there. But it seems that the real problem in German politics is not necessarily Annalena Baerbock or Olaf Scholz. It is Boris Pistorius, and I know that there is talk that Olaf Scholz might be, his time as Chancellor might be coming to an end. I mean, that is a possibility. It's just hard work being German Chancellor, and perhaps we need to think about the defense minister, Boris Pistorius. And I think that Boris Pistorius has a very problematic and worrying chart. So Boris Pistorius, he was born March the 14th, 1960. Interesting, he was born in Osnabrück, which is Olaf Scholz was also born in Osnabrück. So both these men were born in Osnabrück, and he's a Pisces, and so there's his Sun conjunct the South Node, and his Sun in Pisces is, I don't know his time of birth, but it looks as if he's got a Sun sesquiquadrate Neptune. Now, there's nothing wrong, I suppose, being a Pisces politician. I suppose you can be a successful Pisces politician. I don't know, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head other Pisces politicians. Robert Mugabe was a Pisces. He was former president of Zimbabwe. What was he? He was leader of Zimbabwe. Gordon Brown was the former British Prime Minister. He was a Pisces. They come to mind. Were they effective leaders? I'm not actually sure they were, but anyway. So if you're someone who's got Sun sesquiquadrate Neptune, there is a danger as a politician you might get go off in the wrong direction. Now he's supposed to be a socialist politician, SPD. But he's an enthusiastic advocate of this continued war with Russia. Okay, it's not a declared war, and it is a kind of a proxy war, with Germany doing whatever it can to support Ukraine. But arguably, it really is a proxy war, and so he's got the Sun sesquiquadrate Neptune. There is a lot of scope for him. To get confused, and to get not just to get confused, but to get enthusiastically confused, because in terms of midpoints, his Sun is aspecting the Mercury-Jupiter midpoint by, I think it makes a semi-square to his Mercury-Jupiter midpoint, and Neptune is, square his Mercury-Jupiter midpoint. So Mercury-Jupiter as a pair is about big ideas, enthusiastic ideas. This is what he wants to do. Sun aspecting the Mercury-Jupiter midpoint, fine, but Neptune on the Mercury-Jupiter midpoint, ideas which are perhaps plain fantasy, or worse, dangerous fantasies that could get completely out of control. And so that's something that we do need to be very worried about with Pistorius. Also, look at his Mars and his Saturn. His Mars-Saturn midpoint is at 112 Aquarius. And he's got his Saturn-Uranus aspecting that. His Saturn-Uranus midpoint is also lined up with that. So he's got his Mars-Pluto midpoint at about 1 Aquarius. I make it 112 Aquarius. That depends on what time he's born. And he's got Mercury on his Mars-Saturn midpoint. So Mercury is the way he thinks. And so Mars-Saturn is the death pair. It can be about destruction. It can be having negative thoughts, and it could actually be a death wish, an unconscious death wish, for his own country, having Mercury on the Mars-Saturn midpoint. And then we got Pluto at 1 Aquarius. So he's got Pluto on his Mars-Saturn midpoint. And Pluto is therefore making a semi-square to his Mercury. And it's also aspecting his Saturn-Uranus midpoint. So Pluto could be about collective forces taking him over, taking his mind over almost. He is, we've seen Annalena Baerbock just making her speech about, from the European Union going from Lisbon to Luhansk. It's the same sense here in which something collective is starting to take over. The whole German collective, it may go, not when we talk about the Second World War, it could go back to the Battle of Grunwald, which is the beginning of the 15th century when the Teutonic Knights were beaten by the Slavs, and maybe the Battle of Grunwald in the 15th century when the Teutonic Knights had this great defeat. Maybe that is linked, that is part of the German unconscious. And he perhaps, with this war against Russia, there are echoes of this collective which are kind of taking control of him. I mean, I know that sounds dramatic, but how else do you explain it? How else do you explain this country apparently moving towards a war with Russia, a war which could become nuclear? But when you're dealing with collective forces, anything can happen. And so I think it is very worrying that he has got Pluto on his Mars-Saturn, transiting Pluto on his Mars-Saturn midpoint, and he's got Mercury, he's got Mercury on his Mars-Saturn midpoint all the time. And then we have to consider his solar return. So his solar return, because what's going on now, relates to his solar return, which is, it's about to happen. He's about to have a birthday. And here is his solar return for his birthday in 10 days' time. And there is a Sun-Neptune conjunction. Remember, he's got a Sun-Neptune sesquiquadrate in his natal chart. So in his return for his birthday very soon, there's a Sun-Neptune conjunction. So we get a sort of Sun-Neptune theme there in his solar return chart. Might also be of importance the fact that he's got Moon conjunct Uranus in his chart. I mean, the Moon is a planet. We don't know exactly where his Moon is, but in the end, the Moon will get to a conjunction of Uranus. I now want to consider the chart for when we had this conversation between these generals about sort of potentially bombing the Kiev Bridge, this conversation that was released. The Russians got hold of it. According to the Russians, this conversation took place, I believe, on February the 19th. So this is a chart for the conversation. Sun has just moved into Pisces, moving to a conjunction of Saturn. Now, notice that Mars was at 4 degrees Aquarius when these generals were sitting around talking about what they were going to do with missiles. This is real. This is not just Russian propaganda. What was this doing to the German chart? So inside we have a German unification chart, but on that day, as these generals were talking about bombing the Kiev Bridge, I don't know what their fantasies were. I suppose it was, talking about Crimea. I suppose in living memory, the Germans were in Crimea, weren't they? The siege of Sevastopol, when was the siege? In the early 1940s. Or I suppose sort of maybe memories of the glory days. So there you've got Mars was at 4, when they were having this conversation, Mars was at 446 Aquarius, conjunct Germany's descendant. So this is a conversation taking place that was supposedly hidden. This was kind of Germany's shadow. These German generals, what were they talking about? Yeah, we know what they were talking about, but it's perhaps a part of Germany that Germany thought she'd forgotten, that she'd thought she'd moved away from. But apparently not with what these Germans were talking about with Mars, and the fact that Mars was on the seventh house was in the seventh house of Germany's chart, I think is really quite significant here. So then a bit later, I think it was RT released the details about it. So this was a chart. I think I don't know exactly when it happened. I've set this for Moscow. So this was sort of March the 1st, 2024. When it was released, March the 1st, 2024, when the recordings were released, and then we can see how this relates to Pistorius's chart. So Pistorius. So there is inside. So Pistorius's chart is on the. Hold on, which way around is it? Yeah. So Pistorius's chart is in the middle, and this is the positions of the charts on March the 1st. So Mars was moving to a conjunction with Pistorius's Mars. So at the time of the publication of this leak, the defense minister, Boris Pistorius, had his Mars return. And so I think you can see from that chart how angry he was that this information had been revealed. And, he was blaming the Russians. He was saying, blame the Russians for it. The Russians are just trying to cause chaos by releasing the stuff about these conversations. But of course, if this conversation between these German generals hadn't happened, then of course there would be no way to leak this conversation. So in a sense, it was the Germans that would cause it. The Germans had created their own problem, and they're trying to blame Russia for its own problems. And Germany is Germany's got problems, and I'm just working with this concept, perhaps with the German chart, that maybe there's a shadow here, and it may not just be the fact that Germany's 1990 horoscope has a clear link with the horoscope of Nazi Germany, but Nazi Germany is, as I was saying, is in many respects Germany's shadow. But of course that shadow may go back much longer, and so at a collective level, these German politicians who think they're so progressive and so modern may actually be influenced by these sort of dark forces, which may go back to the Battle of Grunwald at the beginning of the 15th century, when they're remembering how the Slavs defeated the Teutonic Knights, and maybe that's all part of it. I'm sorry this video was so messed up, a bit confused, dog barking, and I would have liked to have been a little more eloquent about getting over my message. I think I need to go over these charts again. So I'm sorry about that. But anyway, if you did happen to like this video, I would of course be grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed and you like the video, then I would be grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. Thanks a lot for bearing with me, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.